I modded Pokemon Fire Red, so everything I do only deals 1 damage. You may have some questions, but we'll get to specifics as they come up. For now, let's just get things started. As we all know, there is an objectively correct choice for every starter in every Pokemon game, and this challenge is no different. If you don't pick Bulbasaur, you picked wrong. The start of this run would probably be 5 to 10 hours longer if you chose Squirtle or Charmander. Let me explain why, and you'll start to see the basic strategies that this run is going to use. Now, at the very start, it'll take dozens of turns that we can't even survive to kill even a Rattata or a Pidgey. So we're going to do the thing literally every single challenge run does, and kill Metapod and Kakuna in Viridian Forest. We want to get Bulbasaur to level 15. This is to get us 2 moves, Poison Powder and Leech Seed, both of which deal an extra 1 damage per turn without using any more PP, but Leech Seed even heals us back 1 HP per turn. I also catch a Mankey and a Caterpie. I'll explain why later, and I train both of them up to around level 12. This grinding took me 3 hours of real time with speed up and 14 hours of in-game time. This is going to be a very long one. Astute viewers may have asked why I didn't level up my Bulbasaur to level 16 so it evolves. My answer is that grinding in this challenge is God's punishment for my sins, like when I deleted my brother's save file in Pokemon Red when we were kids. I'm sorry, I was literally only 3 years old. So now with my team all made, I beat Brock pretty easily. There isn't even much to go over. I didn't really even use Mankey other than to switch train it once Onix was almost dead. Now, 2 important things happened on the way to Mount Moon. First is that I caught a Spearow and leveled it to level 13 for a reason that I will explain in literally 36 seconds. The other important thing is that our Bulbasaur evolved. Now, I name my Pokemon in older games with proper capitalization, so I don't feel like I'm yelling at my Pokemon whenever they do anything. I don't know, the all caps, they make me feel mean, so they're gonna be Bulbasaur, Mankey, and Spearow for the entire run. Anyway, now that we got to Mount Moon, we can pick up the most important TM in the run, Bullet Seed. Now we're talking. Multi-hit moves are the reason why I caught Mankey and Spearow and leveled it up to level 13. With Leech Seed, Poison, and multi-hits, we hit our reasonable damage cap that we will basically stay at for the entire run of about 5 damage per turn. Now, don't think about how long the Elite Four is going to take with this, or even how to not run out of PP with 5 battles and limited PP restoring items. We'll get to that much later. For now, while we go through Mount Moon, I'll highlight our first set of problem Pokemon. Lass Miriam has an Oddish and a Bellsprout. Some of you may be ahead of me here. Grass poison types are immune to both Poison Powder and Leech Seed, which are our only 2 options to deal damage without using more PP. For right now, it just takes a while, but there may be an entire gym later where this issue is much worse. For now, let's just keep going knowing that grass and poison types will be annoying. I made my way to Cerulean City. Now that I jumped down into Cerulean, I had access to basically 3 things. I could fight wild Pokemon to the west, I could fight the rival battle, or I could fight Misty and her gym. The rival and Misty were both much too hard for me right now, so I had to grind a bit. The most fun, and honestly quickest way to grind, was just to beat my head against a rival fight until I could win. I didn't want to waste any money, so I spent it all on super potions and some Pokeballs, so I wouldn't have to give it all to Gary when I lost a million times. Now, let's quickly talk about healing item usage. I initially thought that I would need healing items to beat this run. But, not to bury the lead here, by the late game I finally understand what those hardcore Nuzlockers are talking about, and I try not to overlevel the bosses, and I stop using any healing items in battle entirely. But, to get out of Cerulean without being absurdly overleveled, I do need to use potions. Why? Well, I go into Misty's gym and her Star U has Recover. I probably would need to be close to level 35 to 40 to stall the Star U of all of its PP and survive without any heals, and then I would still need to deal with her Starmie. I used every single healing item I could afford to buy before the gym, and I just barely survived while being about 5 to 10 levels higher. I fought everyone around Vermilion, grinded a bit on the rival again, and then beat Lieutenant Surge after a few attempts on one where he didn't use Sonic Boom a ton. Sonic Boom? That move does 20 damage. Why don't you use that, Tipsy? Well, let's clarify some run rules. Moves that deal a set amount of damage? No, they deal 1. That includes Seismic Toss, Dragon Rage, Nightshade, and all the stuff like that. Don't get cute and think that things like Endeavor or Pain Split will work either. They won't. Guillotine and Sheer Cold won't work either. Basically, any cheeky example you could think of, I would simply answer, no, that's against the spirit of the challenge. Now, I initially had 2 exceptions to this. Recoil damage, and the enemy hitting themselves in confusion. Because, I mean, that isn't me doing it, they're doing it to themselves. But, after considering it, I was going to cause the confusion 90% of the time, and if I allowed confusion, this would turn into the confusion-only challenge, and not the 1 damage only challenge. So, I said screw it, and made it so confusion only did 1 HP to enemies as well. That's why I initially caught a Butterfree and a Zubat. I stopped using them after changing this though. So, let's move on with the assumption that effectively only recoil damage can deal more than 1 HP. There'll be one more exception later, but I'll bring it up. So, I cleaned out every last trainer on these routes, which is a sentence that took you 2 seconds to hear, but took 4 hours of just pressing A for me. The new problem Pokemon that revealed themselves in this section are any fighting type, because they hit hard, and surviving all of their PP is very difficult. For example, this single level 17 Machop wiped my level 31 Ivysaur, level 26 Mankey, and level 25 Fearow by itself. Around this time, I started getting hit with Sonic Boom, Nightshade, and Seismic Toss. Any Pokemon with those moves is a huge threat. And finally for now, weirdly enough, Raticates are super tough. They usually know Tail Whip, which will bring me down to -6 defense eventually. They have very respectable attack for the mid-game, and they already know an 80 power stab move. Now, when I was around 10 to 12 levels higher than Erica, I gave her a shot and I didn't even get past her Victory Bell. Not having the extra 2 HP per turn to set up, and also being paralyzed, makes this way too tough for now. I could train up a fire type to burn them to get more damage and to lower the power of her poison type moves, but I had other things I could still do at this point, so I left to do Celadon Game Corner and the Pokemon Tower. I had no idea that the Pokemon after her Victory Bell would be the single scariest Pokemon in the entire run. We'll skip the Giovanni fight in Celadon Game Corner and the Pokemon Tower rival fight for now, as they'll be harder later. Pokemon Tower was extremely easy because everything would just half its health for me. Remember that if the Pokemon does it to itself, it can deal more than 1 damage, so Curse is okay. I needed this too, guys. You can't imagine how nice it is to see an opponent take 30 turns off the battle regularly in this place. Now, after beating the Pokemon Tower, I pick up the most important item in the game, the Flute. This is for 2 reasons. One, I'll explain much later, but for right now, it allows me to access what is underneath these 2 Snorlax. The only reason the later part of this game is even possible without healing items, I now have access to 2 leftovers, which will heal me 1/16 of my HP every turn. That is massive for this challenge. Bulbasaur the Venusaur will be holding his for the entire rest of the run. The second one goes between our other team members depending on the fight. Koga, Sabrina, and Erica are still all too tough for my team, so I decide to head to Silph Co. Now, here's a lightning round for why literally every Pokemon in this building is annoying to fight. Zubat, Golbat, Ekans, and Arbok are Poison type. Coughing and Wheezing are Poison type and lower my accuracy. Grimer and Muck are Poison type, no Disable, Screech, and Minimize. These are awful. I could not beat the Muck trainer yet. Magnemite and Magneton are immune to Poison. They know Sonic Boom as well. Voltorb and Electrode, no Sonic Boom, and Screech. Raticate deals good damage. Drowsy and Hypno, no Disable, can put me to sleep, and are super effective on Bulbasaur the Venusaur. Cubone, his Bone Meringue, messes up Bulbasaur the Venusaur. Kadabra and Mr. Mime also just fuck up Bulbasaur, and Machop and Machoke literally just kill me. They just kill me, there's nothing I could do. I could not beat the Machoke trainer yet. Now, I did lie. There is 1 Sandshrew and 1 Sandslash that were not annoying at all to fight, but every other battle in this building is a slog. It took me 3.5 real-time hours and just over 16 hours of in-game time to beat the Silph Co building. I did leave the rival battle and Giovanni for later though. I mean, I couldn't press A well enough yet. Now it's time for a gym. I decide Koga will be the easiest and I head to him. I was right. His coughing's exploded, his Muck has 1 damaging move, so PP stalling it was easy, and Wheezing has 2 attacking moves, its second one being Tackle. That gym was so brain dead that I decide I must be able to kill Erica, so I head up to Celadon to take her on. Now that I have leftovers, I'm able to take down her Victory Bell while staying at full health. Now her Tangela comes out and uses Ingrain. Ingrain heals 1/16 of her HP every turn. That's easy, I thought. I'll just roar it out with a Growlithe. Then, that didn't work, and I read how Ingrain works. This is going to be bad. Now, I don't trust any stat calculator or resource on the internet to be true, mostly due to user error, but a lot of them suggest around 6 HP would be restored, so let's go with that. I can poison or burn it for 1 HP per turn, I could use Sandstorm for another 1 HP per turn, I could Fire Spin or Wrap for another 1 HP per turn, and I attack 2 to 5 times a turn, and eventually at the end it'll struggle. So, it probably is theoretically possible, but now, let's talk about the issues with some of those things. Sandstorm only lasts 5 turns, so I would need to switch in Onix or Sandslash, which wastes a turn of multi-hit damage. I also don't have a Pokemon that has both multi-hit moves and a move like Fire Spin that deals damage over multiple turns. So, taking into account all of the switching I would have to do to keep everything up, and don't suggest a Sandstream Pokemon, the only one I can catch in this game is Tyranitar in the post-game. Anyway, I don't think it's actually possible to out-DPS this healing, or to be more accurate, it wasn't worth the effort I would need to put in to test it. I wasn't going to train up an entire new team just for a Tangela, as funny as that would be. So, if I wasn't going to out-DPS Ingrain, maybe I could make it so it never uses Ingrain ever before it dies. I looked at a list of every move that exists in this game, and I decided I had 2 possible strategies. First, Drowsy can learn Disable, Taunt, Torment, and Snatch. These are perfect PP stalling moves. But I got bad news. I'm less confident saying this strategy won't work. It probably could, but I was too lazy to keep trying it. I couldn't confirm if when Taunt interrupts a move, if it uses a PP or not in this gen. Disable was also completely useless for stopping it from using Ingrain, because it needed to successfully use it for it to be disabled. Snatch also didn't have enough PP to steal every PP of its Ingrain. I could list a few more things, but these moves can have really weird interactions when used in succession, and needing to make the perfect set of moves to kill Tangela without it getting off a single Ingrain was just too tough. My deepest attempt, I send in, Drowsy! And after 30 minutes of making sure I was choosing the right moves, I failed due to not realizing that Torment will fail if used after a successful snatch of Ingrain. As much as I loved this strategy and I wanted it to be successful, I just couldn't deal with how slow and deliberate every move had to be. And I had a better strategy in my back pocket. I was attempting the PP stall strategy at level 40. Leveling up to level 41 gives me the move Swagger. Some of you may be ahead of me here. While Tangela hitting itself in confusion will always only deal 1 damage because I caused the confusion, a Pokemon running out of PP and using Struggle is its own goddamn fault. You should have brought Ethers. Unluckily enough for us, this gen has the least punishing version of Struggle. In Gen 1, it dealt half of what you dealt. In Gen 4 and onwards, it deals 1/4 of your entire HP every attack. But, in Gen 2 and 3, it only deals 1/4 of the damage you dealt. But, using Swagger to up its attack to max will allow it to deal enough damage to us for it to recoil itself to death. Now, if I realized Pokemon was a baby game and dedicated myself to no healing items by now, I would have just caught a few Wigglytuff with low defense and high HP to act as HP sinks for the struggles. But instead, I saved a lot of time and healed my Drowsy a few times. After 5 hours of research, attempting, and grinding up a Drowsy in the daycare, I defeated a level 24 Tangela. For Vileplume, I simply PP stalled it by staying in with my leftovers and ingrained Drowsy, and then, by the time I sent in Spearow, it only had Stun Spore and Sleep Powder PP, and I had enough PP to kill it. That fight was so fun. So that was quite the ordeal, so much so that we're going to speed by a bunch of stuff again. If you want the real experience of what this run is like, pause this video after every sentence, grab the nearest game controller, and spam a single button for 2 hours. Do that for every sentence, and you'll start to empathize with me. I clear out every trainer I now had access to with Strength and Surf. This also gave me access to 2 out of our 3 final team members. I want you to know I am genuinely not using the legendary birds for the stats, which are great. I was using them for their ability, Pressure. If I send one of these bad boys out and spam Fly, I just wasted 60 PP of the opponent's moves while only getting hit 15 times. That is going to be wildly helpful. If I wanted to tank with good stats, I wouldn't use the birds, I would use my now over-leveled Bulbasaur the Venusaur. By the way, I caught Zapdos on my first ball, and then I spent 40 minutes with Speed Up trying to get Articuno. We love Pokemon. With 2 new team members in tow, I cleaned up Blaine very easily. This is, I think, where I started believing in the no healing item dream. I only used 1 Hyper Potion, which is less than he uses to be fair, and thankfully, I listened to Blaine at the start of the fight, and I had Burn Heal on hand. Now I went to the Sevi Islands, which allowed me to get the final member of our team, and then I went back and finally cleared Silph Co. Again, I'm just going to cover the last Giovanni and rival battles because they're all pretty similar. So let's move on to Sabrina. You may think that Sabrina was going to be extremely difficult, but Flash on Zapdos and 3 Pokemon to fly and pressure PP stall with, I was able to beat her fairly easily. Again, for full transparency, I did use 2 Hyper Potions, one of which didn't end up mattering anyway. And this fight is when I finally resolved no more healing items in battle. A little later than I should have, but at this point, I think all it did was save me from grinding up to absurd levels for Misty, Pokemon Tower Rival, and Erica. Anyway, let's move on to the endgame. It's time to get serious. We have 6 fights left that really matter. Giovanni, the Elite Four, and the Champion. So, let's finally get into some nitty-gritty details and cover how I beat each of these trainers without any healing items. Giovanni starts off with a Rhyhorn. I start off by setting up my 2 HP of damage per turn with Leech Seed and Poison Powder. Now earlier in the run, I said the Flute has 2 uses, and this here is its second use. Spamming it in battle effectively does nothing, but more importantly, it does not use any PP. So, I stay in with Bulbasaur until I notice it getting fairly low, and then I switch out so I can still set up my extra 2 HP per turn on the other Pokemon. I switch into Mankey for her to help. Thanks, Mankey. I send in Zapdos to use 5 PP of Flash, and then back to Bulbasaur to heal back up with leftovers for the next Pokemon. Just spamming Flute for 2 minutes. I bet Giovanni loved that. I then do the exact same 5 flashes and switch into Bulbasaur for Dugtrio. Believe it or not, I do the exact same for Nidoqueen and Nidoking. Riveting stuff. Now, for his level 50 Rhyhorn, I didn't have Zapdos because he got poisoned by Nidoking. So I sent out Spearow after the initial setup, and Giovanni just spammed all of his Earthquakes for some reason. Then he used Takedown, which dealt recoil damage to himself. So by the time I sent out Moltres and it used a couple more takedowns, I had the 8th gym badge with really no issues at all, other than the fact that doing this fight took 3.5 in-game hours. We'll skip the rival before Victory Road, as we have with the rest. So, let's just go right into the Elite Four. I walked in with a level 60 Articuno, Zapdos, Moltres, and Fearow, a level 61 Primeape, and a level 69 Bulbasaur the Venusaur. Nice. Lorelei starts off with a Dugong, who I set up on, and then used 2 PP of Flash so I could survive Flute spam. Slowbro was strong enough to kill Bulbasaur with a lucky crit, so I used a couple of Flash and then used Fly PP stalling with Articuno to get Slowbro down. I thought I could make up HP with Bulbasaur by swapping in against Slowbro Struggle, but my HP stayed about the same and Lapras came in when I was at 46 HP. If I'm going to use luck strats like accuracy stalling, I'm just going to depend on luck, so I stay in and I use Flash twice, knowing that if it hits me, I'll lose Bulbasaur and need to restart. I do get enough off, and then I switch into Mankey for her to help. Thanks, Mankey. After not too many turns, I send out Zapdos, who also has Flash, so I really was risking Venusaur against Lapras for nothing. I PP stall by using Light Screen every once in a while, and then I actually save my Fly PP on Zapdos because it's so important and I only have so many PP restoring items. Once Lapras is struggling, I can send in Bulbasaur, who is now getting net healing per turn, and heals up nearly to full before Jinx comes out. I set up and then use my classic few flashes and PP stall with Moltres as much as I can, and then once it's using Struggle, I send in Bulbasaur to heal up with leftovers, you know the drill. And then she sends out Cloyster, who is so easy I don't even need to flash. Leech Seed, Poison Powder, Flute, done. Next up is the hardest of the Elite Four, Bruno. There aren't many challenge runs where Bruno is the second hardest fight in the game, but here we are. Lorelei I got on my first try. She took 30 minutes of real time and 4 hours of in-game time, but first try. Bruno was about 7 or 8 tries. There was one move that I kept on Spearow this entire time, just because I knew this fight would be difficult after my first encounter with the Machop. Because of that, I kept maybe the least notable move in Pokemon, Growl. And because of the importance of Growl, Spearow has the second leftovers in this fight. I do the normal setup on Onix, and then after a couple of growls from my bird, I was able to Poke-Flute spam with Bulbasaur while staying at full HP. Then, Hitmonchan comes out, and it cannot have its accuracy lowered because it has Keen Eye. So, I send in Spearow before I've even set up my 2 HP per turn, just because it deals so much damage to Bulbasaur that I can't set it up right away. After growling 6 times, I risk half a dozen more crits that would kill me and ruin the run to heal up to full for the next Pokemon. Then, I just Poke-Flute stalled with Bulbasaur, again, crossing my fingers, hoping to not get crit. A bunch of attempts died on Hitmonchan. I then do the exact same thing to Hitmonlee, but with a couple of flashes as well. Now for Machamp. Even if I use 6 flashes, it knows Bulk Up, which will get it to +6 attack and kill anything it hits, which it statistically will eventually with the way this run works. So, I set up with Bulbasaur, flash a little with Zapdos, and then I send in Spearow to literally just spam all of the Growl that it has left to hopefully both survive and keep it below even with its stat increases once it's done with all of its bulk up PP. It does work this time, and I'm able to stall him down. Onix was an easy cleanup at the end as well. Now, it may seem not that difficult from here, but finding out how many flashes was enough without just spamming to -6 on every Pokemon took some trial and error, and Hitmonchan could just kill Spearow or Bulbasaur with a well-timed crit, and it would just doom the attempt immediately. And also, Machoke could end the run by simply getting a crit on any of the 35-ish turns I spammed Growl with Spearow. With the odds that I think I had, I'm amazed I beat this in less than 10 attempts. Bruno took a couple of hours of real time and 3.5 hours of in-game time on the successful attempt. Now, I used the first of my limited PP healing items after this fight. I used a single Ether on Leech Seed and an Elixir on Growl. Yes, that's right, this run is making me use one of my few Elixirs on Growl. Now onto Agatha. Her first Gengar, I just swapped between Bulbasaur and Spearow to bait out Ghost-type attacks into Spearow and then Poison-type attacks into Bulbasaur. Then, once it was struggling, it would break even with leftovers on Bulbasaur. I swapped into Zapdos on Golbat, used a few flashes, and then waited out its Air Cutter PP, and swapped into Bulbasaur to finish out the stall once it was safe. Haunter was the interesting Pokemon for this fight, and why Agatha took a few tries. Haunter has Mean Look, Curse, Hypnosis, and Dream Eater. If it uses those moves in the right order, it can keep a Pokemon in with Mean Look, put it to sleep, Curse, heal, and then be above half to Mean Look and Curse another Pokemon. On this attempt, I sent out Articuno as the sacrifice first. It cursed without Mean Looking, so I switched into Moltres. It Mean Looks and then Dream Eaters me down. Articuno then gets Mean Look cursed. The fly stalling with my 2 birds made it so it struggled by the time I sent out Spearow. So I basically just sacked Spearow and then sent out Bulbasaur for the next Pokemon. 3 Pokemon down on Haunter isn't too bad. Doing the 15 minutes it takes to kill Gengar and Golbat before Haunter was very irritating, so I just kept going. For Arbok, I just do some flashes, and then I send in Mankey to help. Thanks, Mankey. Then, I do some swaps between Bulbasaur and Zapdos to bait poison moves into Bulbasaur, and once it's struggling, Bulbasaur cleans it up. Flashing the Gengar and stalling with Bulbasaur finishes her last Pokemon, and I'm on to Lance. Agatha took 4 hours and 10 minutes of in-game time for the successful attempt. I'm gonna be honest with you, I was conserving PP items, but I still had 20 PP of Flash, so Lance was just use 4 PP of Flash on each Pokemon and hope 3 hit each time. I used some growls on Aerodactyl, but otherwise I just accuracy stalled all of his Pokemon. It took 4 or 5 tries to get good enough luck, and Lance's successful attempt took 4 hours and 48 minutes of in-game time. There's really not much to say. Now for the final battle. His Pidgeot has Keen Eye and Sand Attack, so not only can I not accuracy stall it, it is accuracy stalling me. His Alakazam just hits hard. Exeggutor is a grass type, so no Leech Seed, and it heals itself with Giga Drain. Gyarados has Dragon Rage that will always deal 40 HP, and his other moves just hit hard. Charizard can easily kill my main staller, and really anything else, it just kills me. And Rhydon has Takedown and kills itself a lot. But the other 5 Pokemon are not pushovers, Alakazam and Charizard being particularly difficult. Let's get into it though. I can actually just tank all of Pidgeot's damaging PP with leftovers on Bulbasaur and Zapdos, so I tank it and then heal back up on its Sand Attack PP. Now this first Pokemon seems easy until it starts using Whirlwind, where if I just spam A, I will waste the PP of the top move of the Pokemon that gets sent in. So, even though Pidgeot was not a difficult first Pokemon, I never died to it unless it crit like 3 times. Every single attempt I did of this fight would start with me needing to do careful inputs for 20 turns to not waste PP while it used Whirlwind. So, I couldn't just blank out and spam A at the start, which was really annoying. Anyway, I would kill Pidgeot with Bulbasaur out so I could bait out Alakazam. I flash it 3 times and switch into Zapdos to fly PP stall, but it switches into Rhydon, wasting my flash PP. For the first time in the battle, I send out a Pokemon I can't heal with leftovers, but I need to use Growl on this Rhydon to stall it most effectively. I end the Growl spam with 44 HP on Spearow, which I know from my multiple other attempts is definitely bad enough to consider restarting right now with what I need to Growl later. I continue on though. With 6 Growls, I can stall with Zapdos until it's down. Now, it sends out Alakazam again. After its stint earlier, it doesn't have any Psychic left, so after a couple of flashes, I'm comfortable sending out Zapdos to finish out the stall and get Alakazam down. Now, all of that was basically just set up to specifically be able to get Charizard out as fast as I could figure out. I needed to get rid of Alakazam before Charizard came out, and most of the time Rhydon would get swapped in too. So I would spend 20 or so minutes killing these 3 Pokemon just to immediately get crit or something else by Charizard and need to restart. I usually want to have around 5 flash PP on Bulbasaur and have Spearow at around half health. My winning run, I had 3 flash on Bulbasaur and 44 HP on Spearow. Thankfully, all 3 of my flashes hit, while it only hits 1 Fire Blast. I send in Spearow and only get 2 Growls off. Now it's time to pray. I send in Zapdos and use all of the Fly PP that I was saving up to PP stall this dragon down. I somehow dodge all of the slash crits, and then I send in Bulbasaur to clean up once it's struggling. I just accuracy stalled the Exeggutor, no problem this time, and then I went into Gyarados, his final Pokemon, and you'll see why accuracy stalling is not guaranteed at all. I get 3 flashes off, but all of his moves hit, so that is all I get, when I definitely would have gone down to -6 this time just to lock in the win. Then, Gyarados proceeds to sweep through every single Pokemon in my party, until I send in Mankey. That's right, after all this time you thought Mankey would be useless for the entire endgame? Well, you're right, she died. Thanks, Mankey. Now, it didn't sweep through all of my Pokemon, and this may seem like I'm okay, but on previous attempts, I learned that if I wasn't able to keep Spearow to growl Rhydon, Charizard, and Gyarados, I would not be able to survive Gyarados struggling for the amount of turns that I need to survive. I have literally 1 out to guarantee victory. I need to burn this Gyarados with Moltres. with 3 hours of attempts questing on if this Pokemon can hit a 1 in 10 burn. I get it on the second try. Easy. I PP stall all I can, and then I send in my first and final Pokemon, Bulbasaur the Venusaur, to take it home and put him and his teammates into the Hall of Fame. Thank you everybody for watching. I know this isn't the normal game that I play, but I love Pokemon, and when I thought of this idea, I just had to do it. If you liked this video, then, let me know, and I can do a similar idea in Pokemon Emerald, probably, would be the most likely. Let me know if you guys are interested in that, because I had a ton of fun making this one. Unfortunately, I won't be able to post the mod for this one, because it's a Nintendo game, and I don't want to do that. Plus, the way I had to code this one, I needed to go into the code and edit it every time I caught a Pokemon, just because of the way it worked. So I'm not going to be able to post the mod, but if you want to see more of this, then let me know. Maybe I'll make another Pokemon video. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I also hope that you have an amazing day.